We were in Ireland. I was telling you about that. Last Sunday morning, we went to breakfast someplace, and we came out on the sidewalk, and there was a little coffee shop and a lot of people roaming around, and there was this lady, really tall, thin, and she was dressed to the nines. It was Sunday morning, and the only thing I could figure out is she was going to high church, like fancy church, and her husband was just equally as sharp. And she was doing the grandma thing, striking up conversations with people you don't know. That's something that happens to you at a certain age. I think you just lose all, filters. Anyway, so she's talking to this guy who's reluctantly engaging with her, And she said, "So, where are you from?" And he said something I couldn't hear because he's like looking at her like, And then she says, "Where is it?" And he told her something else I couldn't hear, and she stood up real straight. She said, "Never heard of it." So that's what I've been saying to Julie every time I don't want to do something. Never heard of it. Did you make the bed? Never heard of it. Anyway. So we got this open up your world idea from, I was actually traveling, and we were at a Hilton hotel, and they hand you a little key card sleeve, and the keys are in it. And on the front of it, it was Hilton Hotels. I think it was Hilton, not Hyatt, but Hilton. It said, "Open up your world." And I thought, this is awesome. I love this. It just jumped out at me. And you just go, it's brilliant for a hotel, right? If you go to a hotel and you go to some destinations and you open the door to the room, and open the door to your life, and you open up your world to different places, it's pretty cool. And again, that whole daunting thing about traveling, the nervousness about getting ready and packing right and having all your documents and everything you got to do and walk through customs. What is it about customs? It's like the police. Do you guys have this feeling that I still have a respect for the police? Like if the blue lights come on behind me, I get nervous like I'm a little kid or something. I'm like, what did I do wrong? I'm going to get a spanking. And so it's something about a guy in a uniform, and especially if they don't speak your language, you're like, I'm going to get arrested. I don't know what I did. I didn't even smoke anything. I don't know what it is that's going to get arrested. But anyway, but the excitement, the anticipation of going somewhere, the sense of adventure, the thing that you want to see, the reason that motivates you to go, helps you to overcome, your fear about what it's like to travel and all the things that are kind of barriers to travel. You overcome those, and it leaves you as you do it. I have a bag tag that my family purchased for me. The passport holder says, "Life is short and the world is wide." Life is short and the world is wide. A lot of reasons to travel, right? Yeah. Life's short. Go for it, and the world is wide. The sun will rise and set regardless. What we choose to do with the light while it's here is up to us. So journey wisely. That's good. So I think that one of the things I think about with people with regard to God and church and stuff is that they're reluctant to travel. It's like they haven't had that experience. Like, I've never gone there. I'm not sure what that is. That's maybe for someone else. I'd just rather stay home. I'd rather stay in my lane. I'm not going to do any kind of weird church thing because I just don't want to travel. Sounds interesting, but maybe not. So I think sometimes when we do travel, it's out of desperation. Like we want something bad enough that we overcome all of our fears and we go find our way into spiritual things that we wouldn't have done before. Something motivates us and it helps us to get past the barriers. One of the reasons we like to just set up like this in tables is just to take some of the mystery out of, church a little bit and eat together and visit and all that kind of stuff. But I want to show you something in John chapter 21 that's pretty cool because Jesus invites the disciples to breakfast. So this was really going to work well for us today, right? John 21. And after this, Jesus revealed himself. This is what I kind of hope happens in this breakfast today, is that God just kind of reveals himself to you in a palpable way. That he reveals himself again to the disciples at the Sea of Tiberias or the Sea of Galilee. He reveals himself in this way. Simon Peter, Thomas called the twin. So he's listing disciples that are kind of in the group. Simon Peter, Thomas, which they called the twin, Nathanael of Cana of Galilee, sons of Zebedee. Interestingly, this is the book of John, and John is one of the sons of Zebedee. So the writer, James and John, are the sons of Zebedee. And two other of his disciples were together. And Simon Peter said to them, I go fishing. I'm going to go fishing. Now, you know, they were fishermen before they were disciples. So this is not like, hey, man, I'm really, I just need a weekend off. I'm going to go fishing. I got to throw my bobber in the water somewhere and kick back. I need a break. That's not what this statement is indicative of. This is a statement of, I'm kind of done with the following Jesus around. I'm kind of given up. I'm just like, I'm done. I'm going to go back to fishing. I got a feeling, because Peter was self-funded, and the sons of Zebedee, for that matter, it looked like a lot of times older fathers. I'm giving you too much Bible now. I'm really going down in the weeds. Hang with me here. But the sons of, usually older men married younger women, right? So the dads died off early, and you see actually Zebedee's wife is a follower of Jesus, and she's doing a lot of, so I think their business continued. Even though they were following Jesus around, they had other people conducting that business. It wasn't like it just shut down. So when he says, I'm going back, I'm going to go back to my business that's still running, my mom's still there, and I'm just going to go fishing. I'm going back to the fishing industry. So this is a move away from Jesus to go back to something that he understood that was controllable, that he could work. He knew what kind of result he was going to get. So it's a statement of discouragement. I'm going to go fishing. I'm going back. And Peter was such a leader, they all go, okay, we're going with you. So, Peter and Andrew were also from that industry. So they just all said, okay, we'll just go. We'll all make a little money. How about that? Let's try that on for size. We've been following Jesus around. We're lucky to get a meal. So they go back to fishing. It's a point of discouragement. And he said, we're going to go with you. And they went out and got into the boat, and they fished, all night. They caught nothing. So it didn't turn out like they thought. Yeah. Right? They gave up on Jesus, and they went after it themselves, and even that wasn't going to turn out too good. And Jesus stood on the shore while they were out there fishing. As the day was breaking, he was standing on the shore. And his disciples didn't know that it was Jesus. And he said to them, children, have you caught any fish? A little bit later, you find out that they're just about a football field out into the water. He's on the shore. They're 100 yards away. So, when somebody's 100 yards away, it's hard to distinguish who they are or what they're saying. And so he says, he must have had to shout it, children, do you have any fish? He already knew the answer to this. Yeah. Do you have any fish? And they said, well, no, we haven't. We've been fishing all night. We haven't caught anything. We don't have any fish. And he said, cast your net on the right side of the boat, or go to the other side, and you'll find some. So they did. They hauled it in. There's a great quantity of fish. And the disciple whom Jesus loved, which is back to John, he's the writer here. He calls himself the disciple who Jesus loved, said to Peter, hey, that's the Lord. Yeah. So they're from this boat 100 yards away, football field. I mean, that's out to the street out here at least, right? He goes, that's the Lord. Yeah. And Peter looks at John and he says, that's the Lord? That's the Lord. And Peter jumps into the water. I guess I should read it. And Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord. He put on his outer garment because he was stripped down for work, and he threw himself into the sea. And the other disciples came by the boat dragging a net full of fish, and they were not far from the land, about 100 yards off. Verse 9 says, and they got out on the land, and they saw a charcoal fire in place. So Jesus is asking them about fish, but he's already got a fire going and fish laid out on it and bread. I don't know where he got it, how this happened, but they're out fishing all night. They get nothing, and Jesus has already got fish on the fire on the shore. And he said to them, bring some of your fish that you've just caught. And Simon Peter went, and they hauled the net full of fish. And it wasn't even torn. There were 153 fish. You can tell I'm ADD. I'm just jumping around. I'm not even reading this. And he said, come and have breakfast. This is the why I picked this passage, right? Come and have breakfast. That's what I want to say to you guys. Come and have breakfast. Come hang out with us. Come and have breakfast. And then none of the disciples dared ask him. I guess after his resurrection, he must have appeared differently, because every time they'd see him, he'd have to show him his hands and his side, and he'd kind of have to prove who he was. So he must have appeared differently in his resurrected state. But they knew that even though this was a little mysterious and this was a little nebulous and it was a little bit hard to figure out, it was a little enigmatic, they said, I think the Lord is doing something here. Yeah. I think this is the Lord. They didn't ask him, but in their hearts they knew it was him. And Jesus came and took the bread and he gave it to them and some of the fish. And this is the third time that he revealed himself to the disciples. Man, sometimes it takes a long time to get a message through to us. I mean, if you saw the resurrected Lord once, you don't think that'd be enough? 3 times. These guys are pretty thick-headed. So we set up this whole breakfast, and I just like, I'm not going to speak long. I'm just about done. I'd just like to ask us, and I think if Jesus was in the room, he'd like to just call from the shore from a little ways away in your life and say, how's fishing? It's something you already knows the answer to, by the way, in your life. How's the fishing going? You've been working hard, haven't you? You've been working all night. You've been doing this on your own. You've gone back to fishing. I don't think they did it out of disrespect. I don't think that any of us distance ourselves from God out of disrespect. Maybe out of disappointment or lack of awareness. But we distance ourselves nonetheless. He said, you're working so hard, you've stripped yourself down, shirtless, and you've been fishing, and are you really catching what you want out of life? So everybody in the room, all of us, this just goes for everybody. How's fishing? How's your marriage going? How's the money happening in your household? How's the career? Are you happy? How's your mental health? Are you trying to keep your mental health up, by watching Instagram feeds and reels? Are you happy? Where's the joy in your life? Are you overworking and getting less and less? And Jesus is on the shore of our lives, and I think he's not very far away from us. Some just like 100 yards, you could see him if you look. And he's saying, how's fishing? And I like the way he says this. He says, children, do you have any fish? It's not like he's mad. Like, hey, how's fishing? Like Smart Alec, He calls them children. Children. You have any fish? He's concerned. He's concerned about fishing. George, when I was sharing this with George, he said it's pretty cool that Jesus didn't change anything about the fishing. I mean, it was still the boat, it was still the net, still out in the water, same circumstance, same everything. He just wanted them to try something different. Why don't you do the same thing, but do it like I would do it? Like cast it on the other side, try something else. Cast your net on the other side. And I think sometimes people think of church, they think of it as maybe a place for losers, or they think of as an option for some and not for me. And prayer and spiritual things is something that disappoints maybe. Or something that you go to when you're desperate, and that's when if you really, really need God, that's when you reach out, Or maybe you followed Jesus before and it ended up that, in disappointment, just like the disciples, left alone without any real answers. God didn't give me anything, so why should I do that again? Or maybe you followed Jesus for a while and just gave up, right? But John said it, and I think I'd like that to happen in this room right now. He said, it's the Lord. Yeah. Of all the circumstances and stuff that's happened in your life, have you ever been in watch something on a movie and get chills? Anybody ever get chills? Like what is that physiological thing that happens to us? It's like, whoa, I just got chills about that. That's just a movie. This is somebody acting. Yeah. You get chills. What is that physiological thing? I think it's like John said, it's the Lord. Something about the wonder of life, something about everything that's going on with you. God is not too far away. He's just on the shore, and he's watching, and he's asking you, children, how's fishing? How's it going for you at your house? How's it going with what you're striving to do? You've stripped yourself down. You're working so hard. You're sweating. You're just trying to make it work so hard. You're working through the darkest nights. and I've got some fish here on the shore. Why don't you try fishing a little different? And so Peter threw himself in the sea, and I think that's what kind of has to happen for us sometimes, is we need to let off with the work, trying to make everything work in our lives, and throw ourselves into the sea. I think sometimes we're just one leap away from answers that Jesus would give us instead of always trying to find them ourselves. Somebody, come on. Peter decided to travel, and I think we can open up our world.